What do you think? What could be the hardest way to execute a criminal? I know you're confused about the hard part. For whom is it hard? For the executioner or the criminal? Well, this method is hard for both parties. It's even the craziest method to some extent. This execution is enough to shake you from the inside. Today, we will show you what could be the hardest execution ever in terms of history, so make sure to stay tuned until the end. And now, let's head towards the video. One of the more useful innovations in human history is the wheel, transportation and agriculture were two areas of human society that underwent a major transformation. However, there was other, more nefarious use for the wheel, such as tortures and executions. Now known as breaking wheels, these wheels are utilized for malevolent purposes. The Middle Ages saw a significant increase in the use of the wheel as a method of execution. Additionally, there were often two methods of using a wheel to torture or kill someone, on the wheel or beside the wheel. The Wheel of Catherine, also known as the breaking wheel or execution wheel, or simply the wheel, was a torture device that was used for public executions, primarily in Europe, from antiquity through the Middle Ages and into the early modern era. Similar to the ancient crucifixion, this kind of punishment had a sacral purpose beyond death, because the body was left on the wheel after execution, where it was vulnerable to scavenging animals, birds, and rot. It was thought that this would impede the journey from death to resurrection. It broke the bones of the offender or bludgeoned them to death. The last known execution by the wheel occurred in Prussia in 1841. Those who were sentenced to death by the wheel for crimes such as murder, rape, betrayal, and/or robbery would be brought to a public stage scaffold site and strapped to the ground. The execution wheel was normally a sizable wooden spoked wheel, similar to those seen on transport cars and carriages made of wood, sometimes with an iron rim, occasionally purposefully modified with a rectangular iron thrust, a fixed and projecting blade-like from part of the rim. Not death, but the terrible mutilation of the corpse was the main objective of the first act. As a result, the most typical version would begin by fracturing the leg bones. For this reason, the executioners started with the convicted person's shin bones and moved up to the arms before dropping the execution wheel. Every case had a predetermined rhythm, number of beats, and occasionally even the number of spokes on the wheel. The convict's joints were frequently covered with sharp-edged wood to maximize its impact. Later, some tools could harness the condemned individual. Although it is uncommon, the executioner may be given the order to kill the condemned individual with a shot to the neck or heart after the first act. This happened right away, which happened even less frequently from the head down. The body was either connected to or braided into another wooden spoked wheel in the second act, made possible by the limbs that had been severed. After that, the wheel was raised on a mast or pole to resemble a crucifixion. Then, if necessary, the executioner was free to decapitate or garrote the guilty. On occasion, a tiny gallows was placed on the wheel. For instance, if there was a guilty judgment for both murder and theft, it was considered a sign of God's intervention if the condemned person fell off the wheel while still alive, or the execution failed in another fashion, such as the wheel breaking or moving from its position. In addition to the knowledge of the best ways to heal such injuries, there are votive representations of wheel victims who were saved. The condemned in France were positioned on a cartwheel with their limbs spread out along the spokes, resting on two strong wooden beams. The limb over the space between the beams was then hit with a heavy hammer or an iron bar, breaking the bones. The wheel was then set to slowly rotate. Several times were cruelly repeated in this manner for each limb. On occasion, the executioner was mercifully instructed to strike the condemned in the chest and abdomen. During the years 1603 or 1604 in Edinburgh, Scotland, a servant by the name of Robert Weir shattered his wrist on the wheel. There has been a sparse application of this punishment. It had been committed on behalf of John Kincaid's wife, John Kincaid, to assassinate the Lord of Warriston. Weir was hammered and shattered with a plow's coulter while being fastened to a cartwheel. Later, Lady Warriston was executed by beheading. The famed executioner who put Louis XVI to death during the French Revolution, Charles Henry Sanson, oversaw several executions while utilizing the wheel. Like most forms of torture, the wheel was typically employed to obtain information. Criminals would be persuaded to divulge the names of their accomplices. Who could have imagined people from the past would use a wheel for execution? Certainly not me. What about you? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And for more gruesome and exciting content, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon ASAP. We'll catch up with you in the next one. Until